with many different musical artists that have created very successful businesses as well. Sometimes a creative mind is just not. You just can't shut a creative mind off. You always have ideas and thoughts in your head as well. I'm pretty sure that's true of you.
Well, yeah, today I believe, first of all, this is the greatest time in history for the independent artist, mainly because you have direct access to audience. You're walking around with a full-blown streaming multimedia broadcast network in your hand. You have the ability to kind of build audience, and whoever owns the audience wins. And we now know that it doesn't really take that big of an audience, more of a niche audience, to actually get a successful business rolling. So I think this is the greatest time, and I think artists have to think like businesses. I actually teach startup to artists, and I was teaching it out at USC a few years ago, and I teach this whole process called SPACE, which is Story, Plan, Army, Conversion, Education. And it all ties in. It's designed specifically for artists to think like entrepreneurs, because I really believe that that's the if you want to be in the game today, you have to think like a startup business as an artist. So that's an area that I've really been focusing on, is how do I take my art and turn it into an actual business that I can generate a living from. And today, especially when you look at music, you can't really sell music anymore, right? Those days are over. You can sell some streams, but to make any money streaming wise, you have to have a lot of streams. I think I read just recently that I think the rough number for to make 1 million streams on Spotify will pay you roughly around $5,000, and that goes up or down depending on some variables. But in the sense is there's only like 2% of the entire Spotify catalog has even gotten 1 million streams. So it's very difficult to sell music. So it's like, what do I sell these days as an artist? And it's really about selling the relationship or an experience. And that's really kind of the area I focused on. Right now, I have a company called Think Experience, which is an immersive entertainment company. And what I mean by that, it's new experiences tied in where we're using everything from, AR, augmented reality, VR, virtual reality, very unique experiences. We've been playing in a 360-degree immersive dome in downtown Los Angeles, where it's created an incredible experience. It's almost like a shared VR experience. So I believe, like, as an entrepreneur, as a musician, you have to find ways now to build your own business, and take advantage of the opportunities that are out there through the technologies that's there. But it takes a totally different mindset, and you definitely do have to have an entrepreneurial sort of mind to actually go after this stuff today.
We have a lot of immersive experiences here in Las Vegas, the Las Vegas area. I'd love to see something, some kind of concept from you guys out here. I mean, is that something that's possibly in the works?
We are. We're actually in the midst of some conversations right now. My partners, is a company out of Montreal, and we manage one of those, a tent, which is about 1,600 seat immersive dome theater tent, like a Cirque du Soleil type tent. That was down in Pasadena that now we're looking at possibly putting in Las Vegas. It's the most state-of-the-art immersive theater in the world right now. It's brand new, and we're actually in the midst of having conversations with people as we speak to put that thing there and bring our shows there.
Well, I mean, that's great to hear. I'd love to have that experience to be able to do that here. So it'll be interesting. Once you get that launched, maybe we'll get you back on to talk a little bit about it. You're talking a little bit about the idea of, musicians having to get an audience and to be able to do that as well.
Right.
One of the companies that you do have is OpenOPI, which is very interesting in terms of search engine reliability. I mean, a lot of these artists have to have the ability to, to be able to be searched and found relatively quickly. Or if somebody has, music in the R&B realm, there's so many R&B artists that are out there as well that kind of make themselves stand out a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about the OPI company and open the OPI company and
OPI was more in the medical field. It was the online presence index is what that was about. It was really focused on the medical community for doctors. But I mean, the same type of thinking is important because you're online. People think of online now as just it's either marketing or whatever, but really, truthfully, it's your business. Everything is about your audience. Like I mentioned earlier, whoever owns the audience wins. And what's really interesting is there's actually Kevin Kelly from Wired Magazine, I don't know, about 8-9 years ago, he coined a term called the true fan, 1,000 true fans. And a true fan is somebody that will spend $100 a year on you, whatever you're selling, whether it's your shows, your record, whatever. But if I have 1,000 of those fans, there's my first, $100,000 in revenue. So the idea is really thinking differently as opposed to trying to get out to everybody, but it's really about building building your hive, your super fan sort of army. And actually, I have a friend that is an artist that has around 125 to 30 really big super fans. She says to me that basically funds her for the entire year, that one group of people. So it's really not so much about massive audience for what I would call it. I'll call it the artist middle class, right? It's a little different than, obviously if you're Shawn Mendes or Justin Bieber and you got big record company money. But I'm talking about the independent that wants to create a business, have a good living, and have fun playing their music, doing their art. It's very viable today. It's not simple. You have to get educated and learn how this all works and learn about growth hacking and data science and all those types of things, which are not normally things that artists would do, but those for the artist entrepreneur, you really have to get up to knowledge, because these things can help you so much. One of the big changes that we have today that we've never had before was access to data. So we now know before we even go do something, we can run data and figure out reports and target and find things and get information before we actually go and build something and find out nobody wants it. You can at least find out if there's value, if people care about it before you actually get started. I base all my business stuff and things that I teach on the lean startup principles, which is a set of principles that come out of Silicon Valley. Basically, it's the new way. It's tied to what they call the lean canvas or one-page business plan. But the whole basic premise of a lean startup is, number one, don't run out of resources. So you don't just start throwing money at things until you figure out what you do. Number two, fail fast. So the idea is, if your idea is not working, you want to fail as quickly as possible so that you can readjust and figure out which way you're going. And the third one is test and validate everything. So testing the things that you're going to do prior to actually putting a bunch of money into it, and just going for it and hoping and praying it's going to work. It's more well thought out strategically to make sure that there's a market and things that people care about what you're doing. So we try to tie all that together for artists to really think a little bit different. So my model is to go small. Let's build a repeatable model around 100 people and then grow from there. It's a little different approach, but it's a way that you can start generating revenue pretty quickly from your super fans and get the ball rolling.
I kind of see that as similar to, a chef, having a food truck versus a brick and mortar location. Once you go out there and you kind of get that feedback from what works and what doesn't work, or even just where your location is in terms of where your truck is, can tell you where to set up a brick and mortar, what food works, what does not work, and that kind of almost gives you kind of a test to be able to do that. So it's kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah, and again, anybody out there that are entrepreneurs or looking to do their own business and things, I really recommend just Google Lean Startup, and you'll see a lot of different books. There's a book called Running Lean, and it's really it's an interesting book because the book was written about the book Running Lean and how he turned that book into a #1 bestseller using lean startup principles. So it's a very fascinating book, but you can apply those principles to whatever you want to do. I don't care what business you want to go to. It's very similar, but it's a very methodical way about going about business, so you can start up, do the smallest thing you can do that's going to give you the biggest amount of bang. That's one of the things. So you don't try to boil the ocean, so to speak, but find out determine what is the smallest thing that you can do that's going to give you the most amount of impact, and go make that happen. And those are kind of the principles of this, because so many times entrepreneurs have great ideas. There's a thing called the founder's dilemma, which means you have a great idea and then you put all together, you go raise the money, you go make it, and then nobody shows up. only people who cared about it was you and a few other people. So the idea is, let's take the risk out, reduce risk, test, validate everything before we actually go do it, and then once you know that it's showing strong signals on which way you're going, then you would pour gas on it and go for it, right?
Yeah, it's always nice to have that data and to know that something will catch on.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about like I said, the music. Just having that experience since a young age to be able to perform, in front of an audience. I mean, you had performed on Lawrence Welk. I mean, and some of the newer kids may not be familiar with Lawrence, but he was a huge program back in the day, and just to have that experience in front of an audience and all that as well. I mean, was that kind of where you kind of got the bug that you really wanted to pursue being a musician hardcore?
Well, my dad was actually on the Lawrence Welk show for 15 years, so I kind of grew up on that show. That was my whole childhood was around Lawrence Welk, in the sense, because that's what my dad did every week, right? He was in the band. So I used to hang out a lot at the television stations when I was a kid. And those were the days when there was only 7 television stations, right? It wasn't like today where we've got millions of cable and all these different things. It was like 7 main stations, and Lawrence Welk was the big variety show that was on the air. It's kind of funny. One of the things that I have that nobody else has is I'm the only guy in the world that's played in Lawrence Welk and Pink Floyd, which is a very unique kind of a story to tell, because there's Lawrence Welk was one of the very first variety shows on television back in the day. But I got that really from being around my dad playing music and him being a serial entrepreneur. It's kind of why I think I got the business bug. When I was growing up, we had boat businesses, lighting businesses, candy businesses, reed businesses. My dad was one of the inventors of the wah-wah pedal. We have recording studios. So I was always around this kind of business entrepreneurial side in the music industry at the same time. So that's probably why I kind of got into all this, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the ability to have played with, like I said, so many great bands, Pink Floyd being one of the most prominent. I mean, how's it been for you to be out on the road and be able to tour a little bit? And like I said, it seemed like you were talking a little bit about when you were touring with Floyd, the idea of just studying business and all that as well, and keeping your mind occupied. Sometimes being on the road, there's vices, there's things that go awry, but there's some people that are just really quiet and just want to do their own little thing in terms of what they want to do in their spare time, as it were. I mean, how was it for you to be able to go out and tour with some of these bands? And it seems like you're kind of almost, I wouldn't say a nerd in terms of staying in and being able to read or to be able to study.
Well, there's so much free time when you're out on the road. At least all the tours I did, with Pink Floyd, we played maybe 4 shows a week. So there were lots of days off, and we show up at 5 o'clock, we go do our gig, we're out of there by 10 or 11, we're done, right? We don't have to be any place till noon the next day or 5 o'clock the next day. So there's a lot of time, and even when we're traveling, there's time. So I just took I've always been somebody that likes studying and learning, so I just said, hey, I've got all this free time. It was great. So I took the opportunity on the road during, especially that particular tour to really study business. But in general, I've been on those tours where it was mindless. It's real easy because we can have more fun, and I can honestly say I've had more fun than any human being, and I'm alive to talk about it, which is hard to believe with all the wildness that we used to do back in the day. But I wouldn't trade a thing for it, because it was still incredible times. But so it's just some people can. I knew that because I'd done a couple tours earlier back in the, because I was on the road pretty much every year from 1977 to 92. So I went through the entire 80s, traveling roughly 6 months a year. So I was out a lot, and I just learned that to take the opportunity to use that free time made sense. Now, don't get me wrong, I still had a lot of fun, hung out, did all those things, but I tried to make it so that there was some value, because I knew that the day that the tour was over, I wanted to take off a couple days and then be running right into my next thing. And that's something I try to teach even to all the students. Like when I was teaching ASC, I was telling everybody there,